Hey guys, Sandy Butchers here for the Red Ink Writers podcast. Today I'm back with another video, and this time it's about the most inevitable part of writing. I am talking about self-editing. Alright, today I have 5 tips ready to rock and roll, but before I give them to you, please consider subscribing to our channel and do hit that bell button so you won't miss any of the notifications whenever we launch a brand new video. Alright, are you ready? Here we go. So the first tip I want to give you is keep an eye on those crutch words. We all have crutch words, and in spoken language these are often words like or like, those kind of things. We use them all the time and we're not really aware of the fact that we're using them, but at the same time they are distracting us from the core business of what we are trying to say. The same thing is true for the written word. We often use words that distract us from the actual meaning of the sentence. So in this case it could be words like already or some or quickly or briefly, or words that we use very often, but they don't really have anything to add to what we're trying to say. So keep an eye on those crutch words because they are going to inflate the worth of your written word. So it is very important to write your story in the first place. It's a first draft in this stage still. So while drafting, just keep the words going. But when you start to get to the editing part, I want you to really check which word you use too often, because that's the important part. These are words that you don't just use for once. These are words you continuously use, and they distract us. So I want you to look at those. The second tip I have for you is clean up the adverbs. It is very easy to get lost in the maze of adverbs, and the problem with these words is that they tell us the story instead of showing it to us. So this is definitely connected to the whole show don't tell rule. Now, adverbs are words that most of the times end with ly, so the L and the Y at the end. What you could do is just do a search all, type in those 2 letters, and don't be scared of the amount of results you're going to have, because there's also going to be a lot of words in there that end with those 2 letters but aren't necessarily an adverb. So you're going to get probably thousands of search results in there. Don't worry about it. I want you to go through them one by one though, because you will filter out all the words that are not important to the story at this point. Words like already or quickly, that's also that's a big one. People use quickly all the time, but rather than say, she walked out to the shop quickly, I want you to describe what does quickly look like. Does she take fast steps? Is she running? Is she moving almost like frantically? Show us what quickly looks like instead of just saying quickly. The same thing goes for all the other adverbs. They tell us the story instead of showing us the story. So when you do the search all and you find all the adverbs, I want you to consider for each of them, is there something I can write instead of this adverb that is going to give me a lot of more details on how this is happening instead of just telling us it is happening. The third tip I have for you is to consider the balance between relevance and reason. So something can be very relevant to the story, but it must also be reasonable to put it in there. So for example, Sarah has gone to the dentist 5 years ago, and she had a huge trauma because the dentist took out one of her teeth, and she didn't get the anesthetic, so she felt everything and she was screaming, but she was tied to a chair. It was an absolute nightmare, almost a horror story on its own. Now 5 years later in the story, she has a friend who needs to go to the dentist, and instantly she gets all the the scared feeling, she gets all the horror in front of her again. Did this happen to her? Yes. Is this relevant to her? Probably also yes. Is this relevant to my story though? Not really, because in this case it is about the friend going to the dentist, and you could mention she had a horrible accident at the dentist once. But it's not really relevant at this point in her story arc. So is it reasonable to put it in there? Not really. So this is the consideration you are continuously making throughout your story. Is this relevant to the story? Yes. Is it reasonable to keep it in there? Could be, could not be. That's your decision. So there is a balance. Relevance versus reason. Tip number 4. Work on one chapter at a time. Now, I think I've already said something about working on one chapter at a time in one of the videos where I talk about writing motivation and how to sort of defeat your writer's block if you feel like you're stuck. The same thing goes for when you are editing, because if you work on more chapters at the same time, it is almost, a certainty that you're going to skip fundamental parts of editing once you go from chapter 1 to 10 to 3 to 18, whatever. So work on one chapter at a time, and preferably work in chronological order, because that will keep the whole story arc together. That will keep the narrative logic intact, and then it will enable you to sort of go through everything that needs to be done in a logical order. So logic is actually a keyword here. It will help your brain filter out what needs to be done and what needs to be taken out, or where you need to add something, if you keep track of the chronological order of your story. So work on one chapter at a time. The 5th and final tip I have for you is to create a distance between you and your manuscript. I have said this so many times by now, and this almost connects to the mental health part of writing, but you are not your work. Our work is our baby. We spend so much time, working our way through it and creating it and shaping it into how we want it to be. But the work does not equal us. So if there is something wrong with the work, that doesn't mean there is something wrong with us. So that distance is super important when you start editing, because you are going to have to edit a lot, and you're going to have to take out a lot, and you have to probably add even more. Or maybe the other way around, depending on if you're an over or an under writer. But the most important part here is to make sure that you create that distance, so that whenever you delete a part, it doesn't feel like you are deleting a part of yourself. Writers suffer from imposter syndrome and uncertainties and self-doubt all the time, simply because they are so attached to their work. And it makes sense, because we spend months, if not years, creating this story, this book, this complete manuscript. And then to even say to yourself, this needs to be taken out, that's harsh business. I get it. But like I said, you are not the manuscript, so it is not a matter of deleting a part of yourself, it's deleting a part of something you have created. And remember that you do that to make it even better. So you can even use the inverted positive theory on there. You have created something that you're very proud of, but it can be made better by taking something out. So that's a big negative, because you are deleting something. But at the same time, it is a very positive thing, because it is making it better. Does it make you better? It will make you feel better if you know that it's, it's progression. But again, the distance is important, because if you get stuck in, this is my manuscript, I created it, this is my baby, the editing is not really going to work, because you are not allowing yourself the space you need, to actually improve on the story. So create that distance. Alright, those were my 5 tips for today. I really hope you enjoyed them, and I really hope they are of use, of course. So if they are, please let me know in the comments below. And if you want more of these tips and more on writing advice or editing in general, I repeat myself, please do subscribe to our channel, because we will have many more videos to come. Alright, thanks so much for watching, and I'll be happy to see you around again on the next one. Bye guys!